Absolutely. These action cards for everybody.
Hello, sorry, I'm wrong, please. Thank you very much. Oh, yes, yes, I'm chair of the council.
Happy to keep going. How it's going.
Always so easy to find. So easy.
That's all right, thank you.
Wish I didn't care. Being gone for hours could be anywhere. Hey, I thought you would have gone eventually, but you proved me wrong. You ain't nothing but a lost cause. This ain't nothing like it once was. You know you think you're switching out love, but you got no job. You ain't nothing but a lost cause. And this ain't nothing like it once was. I know you think you're switching out love, but you got no job. What did I tell you? Don't get complacent. It's time to face it now, 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 now. What did I tell you? Don't get complacent. It's time to face it now, 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 now. I hear you go and say you want your freedom, but who am I? It's only right that you should play the way you feel it, but listen carefully to the sounds of loneliness, like a heartbeat drives you mad, in the stillness of remembering what you had and what you lost and what you had and what you lost. Oh, thunder only happens when it's raining. Players only love you when they're playing. Say women, they will come and they will go. When the rain washes you clean, you'll know. Now here I go again to see the crystal vision. I keep my visions to myself. It's only me who wants to wrap around your dreams and have you any dreams you'd like to sell. Dreams of loneliness, like a heartbeat drives you mad, in the stillness of remembering what you had and what you lost and what you had and what you lost. Oh, thunder only happens when it's raining. Players only love you when they're playing. Say women, they will come and they will go. When the rain washes you clean, you'll know. Oh, thunder only happens when it's raining. Players only love you when they're playing. Say women, they will come and they will go. When the rain washes you clean, you'll know. You will know. You will know. Oh, you'll know. Thank you. Come on, skinny love, just last year. Pour a little salt, we were never here. My. Staring at the sink of blood crushed veneer. Tell my love to wreck it all. Cut out all the ropes and let me fall. My. Right in this moment, this art is tall. And I told you to be patient, and I told you to be fine, and I told you to be balanced, and I told you to be kind. And in the morning I'll be with you, but it will be a different kind. And I'll be holding all the tickets, and you'll be owning all the fights. Come on, skinny love, what happened here? Suckle on the hope in Libra's ears. My. Sullen load is full, so slow on the split. And I told you to be patient, and I told you to be fine, and I told you to be balanced, and I told you to be kind. And now all your love is wasted, and then who the hell was I? And I'm breaking at the bridges, and at the end of all your lives, who will love you, who will fight, who will fall far behind. walking on a dream. How can I explain? Talking to myself, will I see again? We are always running for the thrill of it, always pushing up that hill, searching for the thrill of it. On and on we are, calling out and out again, never looking down, I'm just in awe of what's in front of me. Is it real now? Two people become one. I can feel it. Two people become one. Thought I'd never see the love you found in me, and now it's changing all the time. Living in a rhythm where the minutes working overtime. We are always running for the thrill of it, always pushing up that hill, searching for the thrill of it. On and on we are, calling out and out again, never looking down, just in awe of what's in front of me. Is it real now? Two people become one. I can feel it. Two people become one. Is it real now? Two people become one. I can feel it. Two people become one. Catch me, I'm falling down. Catch me, I'm falling down. Don't stop, just keep going on. I'm your shoulder to lean upon, so come on, deliver from inside. All we got is tonight, that is right till first light. Is it real now? Two people become one. I can feel it. Two people become one. Is it real now? Two people become one. I can feel it. Two people become one. I waited till I saw the sun. Don't know why I didn't come. Left you by the house of fun. Don't know why I didn't come. I don't know why I didn't come. When I saw the break of day, wish that I could fly away instead of kneeling in the sand, catching teardrops in my hand. My heart is drenched in wine, but you'll be on my mind. but I'll be a bag of bones driving down the road alone. My heart is drenched in wine, but you'll be on my mind forever. Something has to make you run. Don't know why I didn't come. I feel as empty as a drum. Don't know why I didn't come. I don't know why I didn't come. I don't know why I didn't come. It's not your fault, it can't be your fault that you speak to me the way you do now. I'm split in two, I'm half me and half you, but I hate us both, don't you? No, of course you don't, of course you don't. You say life is peachy without me, of course you don't, of course you don't. You say life is peachy without me. Well, it's not your fault, it can't be your fault that I let you crawl inside my head. 'Cause now you know my places and you know that face, but I hate this taste, don't you? No, of course you don't, of course you don't. You say life is peachy without me, of course you don't, of course you don't. You say life is peachy without me. Grieve me. Learn me It's no one's fault, it's nobody's fault that I fell on you and you on me. That's what humans do, is they pass on through, but I think we can't, don't you? No, of course you don't, of course you don't. You say life is peachy without me, of course you don't, of course you don't. You say life is peachy without me. Hey, what's the matter with your head? Yeah. Hey. with your mind and your signing. Oh, hey. Nothing the matter with your head, baby, find it. Come on and find it. Hey, with it, baby, 'cause you're fine and you're mine and you look so divine. Come and get your love. 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 Hey, what's the matter with you? Feel right? Don't you feel right, baby? Alright, get it from the main vine. Alright, I said find it, find it. Go on and love it if you like it. Yeah. Hey, it's your business if you want some, take some. Get it together, baby. Come and get your love. 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 Come and get your love, come and get your love, come and get your love now. Come and get your love, come and get your love, come and get your love now. Come and get your love, come and get your love, come and get your love now. Come and get your love, come and get your love, come and get your love now. Come and get your love. 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 Hey, what's the matter with you? Feel right? Don't you feel right, baby? Alright, get love, 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 love now. Love, 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 love now. La 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 la. Come and get your love. Thank you. Wolf mother, where you been? You look so worn, so thin. You're a taker, devil's maker. Let me hear you sing, yeah, yeah. Wolf father at the door. You don't smile anymore. You're a drifter, shapeshifter, let me hear you sing, yeah, yeah. Holy light, oh, guard the night, oh, keep the spirit strong. Watch it grow, oh, child of woe, oh, keep holding on. When I ran through the deep dark forest long after this begun, where the sun would set, the trees were dead, and the rivers were none, and I hoped for choice to lead me back home from this blaze. But there was no sound, there was only me and my disgrace. Hey, 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 hey. Ooh. You're a taker, devil's maker, let me hear you sing, yeah, yeah. Oh, Father, shapeshifter, let me see you run, yeah, yeah. Wait.
We'll be back in a little bit, guys. I'm just going to hand the floor over to someone. I'll be sure who. Hang on.
Welcome everyone to 2022 Wilks Oration, and including those who are watching tonight's oration on live stream. Right up front, because it's really important, on our behalf, I'd like to acknowledge the Kaurna people as the traditional custodians of the lands and waters of the Adelaide region and on which we meet tonight. We pay respect to elders, both past and present, and we recognise and welcome any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who might be with us tonight. We acknowledge and respect the Kaurna people's cultural, spiritual, physical, emotional connection with the land, waters and community. So as I said, welcome everyone. And yes, I know it's very hard to be in competition with Kate Blanchett at the Capri Theatre. However, that's their loss. We have many special guests with us tonight, and I'd like to just make a few mentions of those. Our orator tonight and special guest, Tameka Thompson, will be introduced more formally in a few minutes. Also, right up front, I'd like to acknowledge and welcome Dr. Michael and Kat Wilks, and they'll have a special welcome as part of Fergus's introduction as well. Other special guests. We have great connections and great support, as you might have noticed on the screen, from Unley Council. So to Mayor Michael Hewitson, welcome and thank you. It's that time of year when you might have noticed a few corflutes around. So to two Adelaide City Council candidates, Dom Gelanese, sitting over on my left, and Colette Slight. Thank you, welcome, and it's great to have you with us. The Effective Living Centre gets great support from the Uniting Church Synod and the Uniting Church generally, and so to Reverend Dr. Deirdre Palmer, past President of the Uniting Church Assembly and a past moderator of the Synod of South Australia. Great to have you with us again. A great friend of the Effective Living Centre, Professor Dr. Rick Saar, is with us tonight. And it's always wonderful to see you with us, Rick. Thank you. And I was looking around because I wanted to crack some jokes about our Christchurch minister, Dave Williamson, who may or may not be back from his accomplishments at the Hawaii triathlon the other weekend. I can only assume that he's still a bit stiff after about 11 hours of competition. I couldn't do it. So to our special guests and to everyone, welcome. I've got 2 or 3 matters of housekeeping. This is a no smoking, responsible drinking venue. Toilets, I just thought I'd better throw that in. Toilets are by the front doors where you came in, and there's a much larger facility down the hallway which can be entered through the room over to my left if anyone needs a bit more space or has a walker. The emergency exits, the simple one is through the window out the, through the front doors out the back, and there are also exit signs, and there are plenty of people who are familiar with this building, and we have our list of who is here, so we won't miss anyone if we need to, for some reason, do an exit. And I've left this one till last. Can you just have a double check of your phones and make sure that they're on silent or off, or I can't think why we'd have them on flight mode in this building, but if that does it, then that would be really, really good. So there endeth the housekeeping from me, and I'd now like to ask the chair of the Effective Living Centre, Fergus McGinley, to come up and just talk for a few moments about the Wilks Oration, and Fergus will also invite Ash and Joseph back as well. Thank you.
Well, hi everyone. It's been a great night so far, and some beautiful music from Ash and Joseph, and yes, they shall be back shortly. But it's my privilege to introduce the Wilks Oration. What is the Wilks Oration is all about? This is Graham Wilks up here in the picture. The Effective Living Centre was founded in 1998, and Graham was the secretary of the Effective Living Centre for the first 3 formative years of this wonderful organisation. And after he passed away, we held the first Wilks Oration in 2002. Now, yes, Graham's son, Dr. Michael Wilks, and his wife, Kat, give us a wave down the back there. They're here, down here from, where are you guys from? From Adelaide, and here in Adelaide. So they haven't come all that far, so welcome to you guys. Kathy Wilks, Graham's daughter, his oldest daughter, has sent her greetings from Brisbane. She was down here earlier this year for our 2021 Wilks Oration, which was held in February 2022. Who was Graham Wilks? He was both well known and greatly respected in Adelaide, most notably in his groundbreaking and long-serving role as CEO of Relationships Australia. He was a man of broad interest, insight, and unmistakable professionalism. Graham's passion for life and the well-being of all had a far-reaching impact on individuals and the community alike, and he certainly had a great impact on those early formative years of the Effective Living Centre. It is therefore our privilege to annually host the Graham Wilks Oration with the long-term hope that the event and its keynote speaker will help further the quality of life and community health within our state. Who have been some of the amazing speakers from the past? Theologian David Tacey, Julian Burnside QC, Aboriginal elder and leader Lowitja O'Donoghue, the Honourable Michael Kirby, former Chief Justice of the High Court, Hugh Van Lay, I think he was Lieutenant Governor when he was our guest orator at Wilks Oration some years ago, now former Governor, Rachel Cohn, broadcaster, ABC broadcaster, Tanya Hosch, leader of the Recognise movement, Gillian Triggs, former chair of the Human Rights Commission, Professor Henry Reynolds, and of course Stan Grant earlier this year, which was the 2021 oration postponed from 2022. This year we've really hit the jackpot, however, folks, you thought those speakers were amazing. We've got the wonderful Tameka Thompson from the Hutt Street Centre to talk about the Aspire Homeless program. Now, Margaret Calder's going to introduce Tameka in a minute, but before Margaret comes forward to introduce Tameka, Ash and Joseph are going to come back down and they're going to set the scene a bit with some songs which will lead us into the theme of the wonderful Aspire Homeless program. So, and they'll explain the songs that they're going to perform for us. So let's give Ash and Joseph a round of applause again.
Hello everyone. I'm going to play a couple more songs for you guys, and these ones have been picked with like social justice in mind as a theme. The first one we're going to play is called Another Day in Paradise, and it's originally by Phil Collins, but we're doing that Colby version. And yeah, it's sort of, it speaks for itself, the song. Another Day in Paradise is sort of like, it's paradise for a lot of us living here, first world country, but it's like a thin veil when you sort of really look at the way things are. And there's a lot of people who are living in this world that are really unfortunate and they don't reap benefits that we really live in society. And sometimes you just have to remember that. Maybe it's interpretation. There might be a little interpretation. And they're just trying to procure a microphone for us.
1 2 1 2.
Thank you for bearing with us.
Oh, She calls out to the man on the street, "Sir, can you help me? It's so cold and I have nowhere to sleep. Is there some way you can tell me?" He walks on and doesn't look back. He pretends he can hear her, starts to whistle as he crosses the street. He seems embarrassed to be there. Oh, think twice, 'cause it's another day for you and me in paradise. Oh, think twice, it's just another day for you, you and me in paradise. You can tell by the lines on her face. You can see that she's been there, probably been moved on from every place, 'cause she didn't fit in there. Oh, think twice, it's just another day for you and me in paradise. Oh, think twice, 'cause it's another day for you, you and me in paradise. Just think about it. Oh, is there nothing more anyone can do? Oh, there must be something you can say. This next song is a song by an artist called Pink, which you may have heard of. She's got a lot of fun songs, but this one's kind of a little bit more down to earth, I suppose. It's a bit of a call out to some of our leaders and people in power who are sometimes a little bit out of touch with the world. It's called Dear Mr. President. Dear Mr. President, come take a walk with me. Let's pretend we're just two people and you're not better than me. I'd like to ask you some questions if we can speak honestly. What do you feel when you see all the homeless on the street? And who do you pray for at night before you go to sleep? What do you feel when you look in the mirror? Are you proud? How do you sleep while the rest of us cry? How do you dream when I'm how do you walk with your head held high? Can you even in the eye and tell me why. Dear Mr. President, were you a lonely boy? We're not dumb and we're not blind. They're all sitting in your cells while you pave the road to hell. And what kind of father would take his own daughter away? What kind of father might hate his own daughter if she were gay? I can only imagine what the first lady to say goodbye. How do you walk with your head held high? Can you even look me in the eye? Let me tell you about homework. Way through the baby on the way. Let me tell you about homework. Putting your house up the bombs to play. Let me tell you about do you sleep at night? How do you walk with your head held high? Dear Mr. President, you never take a walk with me. Would you? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much. We're Ashton Joseph Music, so feel free to look us up on Instagram and things like that. And thank you for having us again, and yeah, thank you for having us. Bye.
Well, I'd like to add my welcome to you all to the Wilks Oration, and particularly I would like to welcome and introduce Tameka to you. Tameka grew up in Peterborough, and her family in Peterborough have joined us online, and some of her friends today are listening, and I'm sure they're going to be so proud of the work that you're doing here, Tameka. She started her career after doing social work at the UniSA. She started her career in the Hutt Street Centre. And after 9 years, she's still working for that organisation, and she says she loves it. She has worked across 3 different teams in case management and in leadership roles, and she likes the Hutt Street Centre and the Hutt Street environment. And just a little link with Graham Wilks, because Kathy told me this week when she rang that your father, Michael, worked from Hutt Street when he was first down here, and he liked that environment too. So she said, it's really fortuitous, Kathy said, that we've got someone from the Hutt Street Centre, which he was very instrumental in helping with. And one of our first speakers, Wilks Orators, was Ian Cox, and he also, it must be his son who's now CEO of homelessness in South Australia. Tameka currently manages the Aspire program. It's leading South Australia's first social impact bond and Australia's first homelessness specific social impact bond. Last year, she completed the Governor's Leadership Foundation program, and in June this year, she was named as one of South Australia's 40 under 40 top leaders. And when you listen to the work that Tameka is doing with Aspire, I think if you look at our ELC banner here, celebrating the dignity and potential of every person for the common good of all. Tameka said she feels privileged to do something that she genuinely loves as a job. She's been able to walk alongside some of the state's most vulnerable people, supporting people to make significant changes in their lives and their future. She's been reconnecting them with loved ones, with their families and with their friends. And she's helping some of them put a key into the front door of a new house. From connecting people to hobbies and interests, employment and training, to be a friendly face and a listening ear. Tameka believes that what happens on the ground needs to inform decision making at higher levels, and she makes it her business to bring this into her work. So Tameka, welcome to our Effective Living Centre as our 2022 Wilks Orator.
Thank you so much, Margaret. What a lovely introduction. And thank you for the lovely words of encouragement earlier today. I saw Margaret a little bit earlier and the nerves were starting to kick in, so I've got my notes here to keep me on track, so fingers crossed I don't go rogue. Margaret, I also want to thank you and on behalf of the ELC for asking me to present this year's Wilks Oration. It's an absolute honour to be asked. Sorry, I'm just thinking I need to need some instructions for this little do for lucky. Is that going to work? Oh, here we go. There we go. Can't be trusted with technology. So I would also like to start with my own acknowledgement as well. So I would really like to acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the land and the waterways of the Kaurna Plains upon which we meet tonight. We acknowledge the Kaurna people's cultural, spiritual, physical, economical and emotional relationship with their land, waters and community. We pay respect to elders past, present and emerging. I would also like to take a moment to acknowledge anyone with lived experience of homelessness. I want to acknowledge Hutt Street Centre and the Aspire team. They are a group of incredibly hardworking and passionate people. And without them, I wouldn't be here talking about the program with you tonight. I want to thank the ELC committee members for putting this event together. And I'm going to piggyback on the speakers that have come before me in welcoming our special guests and everybody that's here joining us in person tonight and everyone that's joining us on the live stream. I know that you had Stan Grant earlier this year who was your 2021 orator, and what a wonderful, incredibly talented list of previous orators that you've had before me today. A little bit overwhelming. I've been lucky enough to hear many of them speak before. The Honourable Hugh Van Lay is an incredible speaker. Ian Cox, the Hutt Street Centre's former CEO, and they've all got really, really important things to say, and everybody else that follows them. But Stan is definitely a tough act to follow, so hopefully your memories are a little bit hazy from February. I'll be really honest, public speaking is definitely not my forte. I'm definitely known in my friends and family circles as being a chatter, and definitely probably speak a little bit quickly, so I'm really trying to not do that tonight. But it's definitely something I'm not overly confident in, but I'm really passionate about the topic, and it's the content that's really important. It's not about my nerves. It's not about my fears of public speaking and saying something silly. It's about, homelessness and the Hutt Street Centre and the Aspire program. Alrighty. So I think some of this has already been mentioned, so that must mean it must be true. When I was reading about Graham Wilks, I couldn't help but notice the similarities between Graham and his background and everything that we do at Hutt Street Centre, and the things that I believe in really deeply. From what I can tell, Graham was a really passionate man. He was a man of faith. He was seeking ways to find connection. He was acknowledging that things were changing, and I think after the last couple of years, particularly with COVID, we know that things change and how quickly they change, and life as we know it just can be turned upside down. Graham was acknowledging that we were moving away from maybe the more traditional forms of faith, and was looking at different ways to find that connection and that meaning. And I think for Hutt Street, and I think life itself really, everything that we do is about connection and relationships. Graham was described as a caring man and as an innovator. And again, that correlation just really speaks for itself, and hopefully you'll notice that as I continue this evening. I also thought about, the ELC, and I just started to ponder what does living effectively mean for me? The first thing that jumped out at me was it's about my support network. It's about my friends. It's about my family. Again, connection. It's about having a purpose. I am so lucky, as Margaret mentioned, I do something that I really love, and I find a lot of my purpose and meaning from that every single day. I'm really lucky, I'm really privileged, and I'm really conscious of checking my own privilege, particularly on those tough days that we all have when we're feeling a little bit sad and sorry for ourselves, which is okay, but I'm really fortunate to have a really good education. That means that I can do the work that I do in the industry that I work in. I think living effectively is about having freedom. It's about being able to make choices. It's about having fun. Living life to the absolute fullest. I look around the room and you're all kind enough to spend your Friday night with me. I'm sure you probably could have done lots of other things, but here we are, and I'm grateful that you are. One of my favourite things about what I get to do for a job is to challenge stereotypes. Sometimes it's about having some confronting and challenging conversations, but if it's for the purpose of changing someone's viewpoint, or just even if they leave just thinking a little bit differently or keeping that little thing in mind, I think, that's my job done. I often hear people say, I don't know how you do what you do. And again, I think we've sort of touched on it already. I get to work with some of our cities and our state, I would argue, most vulnerable people, and they share with us, they trust us, in their probably, you're not probably ever more vulnerable than you are when you're relying on somebody to help you find a home, find a house, just to walk into the front doors of somewhere and ask for help. I know that it's not something I'm always great at, because you kind of have to put your dignity behind you a little bit. So that's how I do what I do, because I know how lucky I am. But I guess I just wanted to ask a little bit, this is my bread and butter, I know this stuff inside and out, but I just wanted to ask, if just by show of hands, could you let me know if you've heard of the Hutt Street Centre before? Oh, wow. Go Hutt Street Centre. I was thinking like 50-50. I was like, okay, this is going to be great, but that's awesome. We have an incredible marketing team that, do a wonderful job of our brand, so they'll be pleased to know. What about, and before tonight, so there's no cheating, so before you've seen the wonderful, images around the place and the posters for tonight, who had heard of the Aspire program? Okay. Awesome, so you're definitely going to learn something tonight. I hope some people at home are putting your hands up, because I know I waffle on about it all the time. My next question, just going to ask if anyone's willing to be really brave and raise your hand if you or someone you know has experienced homelessness. Okay. Thank you. I really appreciate you being a little bit brave with me again on your Friday evening, and the tough questions are coming out. The wine helps. The wine helps. Yes, I agree. I left mine at the chair because I thought I probably wouldn't bring it up here with me tonight, because who knows what I'll start talking about. So I'm going to start by talking about Hutt Street Centre, our history, and where we are today. This will then lead me into talking about the Aspire program, which is one of a number of programs that we run. Hutt Street Centre was established in 1954 and is a work of the Daughters of Charity. The Daughters came to Australia in 1926 and were later asked to come to Adelaide by the Archbishop of the time to assist predominantly returned servicemen who were sleeping in the park of in the southeastern corner of the CBD. So given the show of hands tonight, everyone's familiar with us, so you probably all know where we're located, and we're still there today. The sisters actually slept in the building where my office is, so I'm literally working every day where a sister used to sleep in the early 50s, which is amazing. And basically when we started out, the sisters would provide tea, soup and sandwiches to the men. So I'm just going to jump forward. So you can just see here, I'm sorry, I can't go rogue from the mic, but initially we were named Sister Louise House. So that's a photo from when we were first established in 1954. And you can see the chapel on the left-hand side, which is currently now our boardroom. And on the, I'm getting my lefts and rights confused now, on the right-hand side, we've got what our building looks like today. So you're probably somewhat familiar that we completed a redevelopment that concluded probably in February 2021, and that those doors are now the entry to our Wellbeing Centre, which if you compare it to the first photo is the third building. It looks really different now, so I'm guessing, has everyone sort of seen it somewhat recently, driven down Hutt Street? Yeah, so we still span that same space, but a lot of the little water separations between the buildings are now enclosed, and it's all sort of one building, and they're now become our walkways where we walk to from our meetings and to our offices and things like that. So I really like the history. I think it's just a great shot, and it's a pretty incredible transformation. We were finding that beforehand our service, our buildings just weren't really quite fit for purpose, and we needed a space that, made the work that we do a little bit easier. It's better for our participants, much more natural light, it's much safer, and it's amazing. So we're really grateful to have the building that we currently do, but also really grateful for our history. Has anyone, you've all heard, well, I think pretty much everyone said that they'd heard of Hutt Street Centre. Has anyone been there very lucky. Not biased at all, am I? So, the Daughters of Charity was founded by Vincent de Paul and his friend Louise de Marillac. This was a result of their work with vulnerable people in cities and rural areas in 17th century France. Hutt Street, we still work with the daughters. We have a sister, Sister Deborah, who sits on our board, and the Daughters of Charity continue to work across the globe, supporting people who require their support. Probably similarly to what I was reading about Graham, where sort of that changing landscape in the faith space is sort of what the daughters are facing as well. I don't think they're getting a lot of new members and younger members, and the landscape changes quite a bit over time. Recently, I was really lucky to hear Sister Deborah speak to our leadership team about the history of the Daughters of Charity. She was sharing that the sisters used to go out into the streets, again of 17th century France, to provide food and support to people who had no homes, had lost their families. In those times, it was things like plague. You know, we're talking about COVID, they're talking about the plague. Sometimes it's interesting and sometimes it's a little bit scary how little things have changed. But it was a really good reminder that, you know, the work that we do every single day is still so closely aligned to our humble beginnings and our origins. So it just means that, you know, for me, I was like, we're still really true to why we're here and why we were founded and why the Archbishop asked us to come, or, you know, asked the sisters all those years ago. So Hutt Street Centre is a values-based organisation with a vision to end homelessness. Our values guide everything that we do, from working with our participants to the decisions we make at a leadership level. And once again, we've got those similarities where we've got the values here, and I noticed on the slides before when we were listening to Ash and Joseph around the values and the vision of the ELC. So again, it's another really nice link. And probably more to why Margaret so kindly asked me to join you tonight. So it all kind of works out. So, homelessness. It comes in many shapes and forms. It might be staying with friends and relatives. You might be crashing on the couch. You might be sleeping on the floor. Probably worried about overstaying your welcome. You're moving around constantly from place to place, wondering, you know, where your next meal's coming from, where you're going to sleep. You've never got any certainty. It might be sleeping in your car, and, you know, a lot of this stuff that I draw on isn't just made up, it's drawn on from the stuff that, you know, I've worked with. It might be sleeping in your car, you might be getting up. I mean, if you've ever slept in a car, it's not the best night's sleep you've ever had. You get out, you stretch yourself out, you wiggle around, try to limber up a little bit. You might come into the centre, have some breakfast, you might have a shower, and then off you go for your day of work. So you've had a pretty crappy sleep, and then, you know, hopefully you've had a really hearty, good breakfast, I think we do, but and a hot shower, but then you're off to work before coming back again to have another pretty rough sleep. You might be sleeping with your family in a hotel room with only a kettle and a toaster, maybe a microwave if you're lucky, as your cooking facilities. You know, it might be the person that serves you at your local supermarket. It might be the person that's a teacher at your kid's school. It might be a friend. It might be a relative. It's not always the stereotypical person. They're not sleeping on the park bench. They might not be sleeping under a bridge or pushing a trolley. People have often shared their experiences with me over the years, and what I know is people often sleep during the day so that they can stay awake during the night to keep safe. They might be seeking shelter inside a 24/7 service station. They might be sitting in, you know, the local Hungry Jack's or McDonald's. People are incredibly resilient. I've never forgotten someone telling me that they paid for a gym membership at a 24/7 gym so that they had something to do at night, somewhere to go. And it was a bonus that there were some showers. I've definitely used that wisdom that that kind person shared with me, and I've shared it with other people as well. Homelessness is not a choice, but often a product of a person's circumstances and experiences. In saying that, people often have to make some pretty difficult choices. It might be a decision between sleeping in a house where you feel unsafe versus sleeping on the street where you might feel a little bit safer. It might be staying on the street because you know that a certain accommodation setting is going to be worse off for your mental health. So sometimes we hear people talk about, I guess it boils down to control. So when you're sleeping on the streets, you've got to, you can see around you. As I said, you might be awake because you've slept during the day. When you're in a room, and sometimes some of the shorter term, more temporary types of accommodation, it's pretty much just a bedroom, one door in, one door out, maybe a window, got a bed, you might have a telly, maybe a cupboard, but you're kind of boxed in and you're kind of confined. And I guess if you consider that your neighbours might have a lot going on, that feeling of safety and security might not be feeling overly strong for you. So the streets maybe feel safer. Which seems a bit like, often even when I still hear those words come out of my mouth, I'm like, that's crazy, right? Like, I'd be petrified. I wouldn't know what to do, and I've worked in this industry for close to 9 years. People who seek our support have experienced things like trauma, relationship breakdown, domestic and family violence, mental illness, disability, maybe substance misuse, or perhaps it's a combination of all of the above. So we know that over half of our participants experience, 3 or more of these challenges. And I think it's a bit of a cyclical nature of causes and consequences of homelessness. Something might cause it, something might be the consequence of it, and they're all sort of the same sorts of topics. At Hutt Street Centre, we see people from all walks of life. I think we probably all have a certain view of what homelessness is, or what somebody who is experiencing homelessness might look like. Maybe might be how they behave. And, I'll say that I definitely did once upon a time. I grew up in a small country town. There was definitely a lot of poverty, but it wasn't the visible rough sleeping on the streets. So I definitely had an idea that, maybe you'd made some bad choices and you'd landed yourself in a sticky situation and you could pretty easily get out of it. That was well before my social work degree. But I think what's pretty blatantly obvious is that, it might be people that have done it tough. They might have had a really rough life. Again, they might have had that family relationship breakdown in their family. They might have just had some really tough things happening. Could be the domestic and the family violence. But we also see people who have maybe run their own business. They might be CEOs. They might have had successful careers. Maybe they've gone to some of Adelaide's finest private schools. Maybe they've worked in, some of the organisations or businesses that, we all use, and things have changed and they've fallen on hard times. Homelessness doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care who you are, where you're from, what you do. So I guess that's a little bit about who we are and why we do what we do. So now I just want to move towards our current, what we call our model of care. I'm really proud to say that Hutt Street Centre is a place of care, support and connection. On the screen behind me here, I've got our vision and I've got our values, and I've got a couple of photos. So I've got just our laundry facility there. which has got washers and dryers, and on the other side, that's a photo, which I still often find quite heartbreaking. It's our locker room. So that is a place where particularly people who are sleeping rough on the streets can store their personal possessions, somewhere safe, keep things dry, keep things out of harm's way. But sometimes I do get really sad when I walk in there and just think that that little square box is all that somebody has. I encourage you to have a bit of a ponder when you go home this evening and look around your home. I think our homes are filled with precious things. Might be memories, might be photographs, our furniture. But for our client group, it's what you can carry. So I did also chuck in some other photos that I'd forgotten about actually. So I've got here the then and the now. So that's one of our sisters in 1954 or close to, and there she is serving out the sandwiches to the very well-dressed gentleman. I love this photo. And now they are some of our meals that we serve in our dining hall. And as staff, we're pretty lucky because we do get to eat one of those from time to time. It keeps us going throughout the day. So this is our current model of care. So some of the pictures are a little bit small, but I will walk you through it. I want to kind of take you on a bit of a journey of what it's like to come to Hutt Street Centre, when we're not actually there, but imagine you are. We're sitting down at 260 Hutt Street. So when someone first comes to our centre, you walk into the doors I showed you earlier of a building that we call our Wellbeing Centre. This is where we are able to meet people's basic needs. Might be a home-cooked meal like the one I just showed you. We serve up to 40,000 meals a year. Whoa. Might be a hot shower. It might be somewhere, as I showed you before, to store your personal belongings and wash your clothes. We're a postal address as well, so something that often does get forgotten about is where do you get your mail if you don't have a fixed address. So we've often got people popping in to collect their mail. We also help people to get access to ID. So again, when I talked about moving around from place to place constantly, it gets pretty tricky to lose track of your belongings. I know, I'm definitely guilty of rushing out the house going, where's my phone, where's my keys? Hopefully there's some people going to nod and agree that we've all been there. But if you're moving around and you're packing and you're unpacking constantly, and I'm sure we've had experiences where you've packed and you've gone somewhere, stayed with a friend or maybe a hotel, and you've left something behind. But this is what happens for our clients every single day, and they might not have that vital piece of identity information, or it might be that people are fleeing a really unsafe situation and they have to get out of there quick smart, and you're not thinking about where's my licence or where's my birth certificate. So this is a pretty vital service that we offer, and it's very, very well utilised. And the other thing that's probably a little bit out of left field and people often don't realise, but we have a phone charging station. So, where do you charge your phone, and where do you get some power? But phone and ID are so important in terms of people being able to access. It might be Centrelink, it might be housing, accommodation, a lot of even the shorter term options, and it might be staying in a motel for a little bit, ask you for your ID to prove who you are. Particularly, when it's not during COVID times, some motels are really wary and sort of want you to have like an interstate licence, or they kind of want to know that you're travelling and you're passing through. There's a little bit of discrimination there that we do face from time to time. And we also need ID for housing. So in addition to this, we have over 20 visiting services. So our client group have access to GPs, optometrists, dentists, physio, financial counselling, legal support, hairdressing, the list goes on. Last week we had a healthy heart clinic that came in, and that was, a bit of a last minute thing, but that was really well utilised. We also have groups. We have an incredible team that we call our Pathways team, and they run cooking groups, art classes, book club. They have a women's group. Hopefully soon we'll have a men's group. Gardening, we have a group of people that go and sort of tidy up and do some general sort of work around the Hutt Street area and kind of keep the area really lovely and beautiful. And they get to know all the local businesses, and everyone loves the gangreens, we call them. And I mentioned before that we serve over 40,000, well, can serve over 40,000 meals a year. What that might look like on an average day is over 150 breakfasts and more than 350 lunches a day. So through those front doors of those glass sliding doors, you might have over 350 people in a day. I will note sometimes the same people that have breakfast will have lunch, so but it is a lot of people. There's a lot of foot traffic. So once we've kind of got the basics taken care of, people tend to settle. Once that person's comfortable and ready, and maybe not for everybody, they might start to think about engaging with some case management services, taking those next steps and exploring their goals. Might start with some short-term case management. We have what we call our Towards Home Alliance team. They tend to focus a little bit more on a crisis response. So that pretty immediate, I've got nowhere to sleep tonight. Where am I going to sleep tonight? And then where am I going to sleep tomorrow night? So that it's pretty immediate in terms of finding that immediate accommodation and making some referrals and getting some supports in place. It might be engaging with our Aged City Living team, which is the team that I started out in at Hutt Street. That offers a more medium, maybe longer term support, and it's for people aged over 55. So it's pretty young, but what we know is that people who experience homelessness experience premature aging. So, your date of birth might say that you're 55, but your body might be telling you that you're 75. Often the people in this program might be experiencing chronic health conditions, heart disease, diabetes, and other concerns like I mentioned before, mental illness, relationship breakdown. And I think we see there's an added level of vulnerability, and sadly we certainly do see people that have got nowhere to go and might have a walker or a wheelchair, and it's just a little bit more confronting than sort of the other types of homelessness that we see. People might also engage with Aspire, which, as you know, is my program, much longer term case management. We wrap support around people, we walk alongside our participants, and we support them to achieve their goals. This is what we call homefulness. Have you ever heard the age-old conversation around, just get a job, get a house, get off the streets? I definitely have. If only it was that simple. It's not just about the bricks and mortar. It's about having a safe and secure home. We really focus on long-term sustainable tenancies where people are going to thrive in a property that meets their needs in a suitable location. So thinking about things like it might be an area that you're familiar with, close to public transport, it might be near your mum or a friend, or it might be close to your supports. So often people want to live near the city, so they're close to us, which is a little bit trickier because I think everyone wants to live in the city. It means connecting with your local community, finding things to fill your day, things that give you purpose. Might be work, might be volunteering, might be study, something completely different. Might be pottering in your own garden, tending to your vegetables, going to the library, making appointments and managing appointments, trying to get your life back on track. If you're so consumed day by day thinking about where am I going to eat, where am I going to sleep, you're not worried about your doctor's appointment, you're not worried about, I'm meant to see my case manager at Hutt Street. Sometimes, even though they know that we might be that way out, there's just so much else going on. It might be, I'm not going to go get another script and get to the chemist. Sometimes our participants haven't seen a GP in years. And I often hear that people say that the reason they want our support is to turn their life around. That might also mean reconnecting with family, developing skills, having a sense of independence and actively contributing to the community. Basically, we focus on what's going to sustain people beyond our support so that they don't need us anymore. Aspire is a program that is genuinely ending people's experience of homelessness. Hutt Street Centre developed and delivers the Aspire program across metropolitan Adelaide. It's a partnership with Social Ventures Australia, the state government and Housing Choices Australia. It's a 7-year program, and as of July this year, we commenced Year 6. Aspire aims to permanently end homelessness for people aged 18 to 55 by providing up to 3 years of long-term, individualised case management supports. Aspire was born because, at Hutt Street we could see our client group cycling in and out of homelessness. People were cycling in and out of hospital and in and out of prison. And we often find that someone would rock up on our doorstep having just left a hospital ward, which I can't think of anything worse, because all you want to do is go home and you're probably still feeling pretty crappy even though you've been, released from hospital or prison. I'm sure you just want some freedoms, enjoy things a little bit when you've kind of been told what to do and what to do it for however long. So there was a gap in what services were offering. There was a gap for longer term supports, and we really wanted to see a sustainable option. We knew that we had to think outside of the box when it came to how we would fund and deliver this program. The government was already funding existing homelessness services. There's a lot of research, a lot of looking into what models exist overseas, and we did talk about Ian Cox earlier, and he was pivotal in this. This program is basically his baby. So a lot of different avenues were explored before we launched into this social impact bond. Has anyone heard of a social impact bond? Okay, you're about to make my job a little bit easier then, that's great. So I'm going to reiterate that Aspire was the first homelessness-specific social impact bond in Australia and the first social impact bond in South Australia. A social impact bond is an innovative way to fund social service programs, and it's a contract between the government and the service provider. It's an outcomes-based contract. So for Aspire, there was $9 million of upfront capital raised from private investors, and that was used to run the program. This is definitely not my forte when it comes to the program, but investors receive a 2% per annum fixed return over the first 4 years of the bond and performance-based returns in the final 3 years. So basically investors are paid based on the performance of the program. So no pressure. Through this model, we were able to have greater transparency and information sharing with our partners in order to measure impact. This was quite a change in South Australia because what I've found is often it's competitive tendering. Has anyone worked in government or social services, government sector? Few hands, yeah. So you're all kind of in competition with one another. So you're kind of holding your cards really close to your chest. Like, I'm not telling you my secrets and I'm not telling you mine because, come the end of the funding, we're all in the same boat and we're all competing for that one bucket of money. With the social impact bond, there's a group of people that all come together and we're all invested in the outcomes. We all want it to work. You've got health, you've got justice, you've got homelessness, the government, which is pretty great. So what we do is we measure those 3 areas, health, justice and homelessness, relative to a historic baseline. And that's the way that we measure our outcomes. So basically we look at, let's use hospital as an example. Before Aspire, you're sleeping rough and you're presenting to the ED pretty frequently because your mental health's probably not great and maybe you've been assaulted, things have happened and you're needing those services. You join Aspire, hopefully everything's pretty hunky-dory, you move into a property and things are on the up for you and you're no longer needing that ED as much anymore. Often if you do, use it, definitely. We never would stop that. And then we sort of are tracking, so before, during and after the program, so that we can look at what our impact is, and those payments back to investors are determined on those numbers. This came about because what we know about people experiencing homelessness is that they are more likely to present to hospital, land in prison, or emergency accommodation than people who aren't experiencing homelessness. These three areas are all areas that cost our state government lots of money. We all know that they can be pretty tight with their purse strings sometimes, so we were looking at a way that we could work together on that. Hopefully there's not too many treasurers or anything listening. So Aspire focuses on a housing first model, which leads to one of the biggest challenges that we've had in the program, which has been around securing reliable housing. The housing first principle is based on 5 key elements: housing, choice, recovery, support, and community. While we know that these responses vary, those core principles are generally required to make this happen. So what we notice in reality is that sometimes we've had limitations to accessing housing supply, so these steps might not happen in that order. So it might be support first, the housing comes a little bit later than we all probably would like, but we really make sure that we've still got the choice, recovery and community, and that's where it's like, it's not just any house. If this is a house and it's not going to meet your needs, there's no pressure from us. We want you to find the right house that's going to last. Basically, average time from referral to getting housing is around about 4 months. We're at that sort of time of year where we're looking at all our current figures, so that is last year's figure. But this really does vary, so sometimes people could wait a year, sometimes people might be housed in a matter of weeks. It's basically a bit of a lottery. Depends on where you want to live, where you can live, property type that you need, and other needs. So sometimes people might need specific items in their home. Say, for example, they might have a disability and they require certain things. So what we do is we basically focus on housing people as quickly as possible, which might seem like a shock, and then we get all the relevant supports in place. So that means that people might stay in some shorter term accommodation options like the Vinnie's Men's Shelter. I believe you've had Tony Roach as a previous orator, or boarding houses, while we're working madly behind the scenes trying to get something more sustainable. We work in 3 stages: stabilisation, re-engagement and monitoring, or as we tend to call them in the office, stage 1, 2 and 3. It's a little bit easier. The beauty of these stages are that they're fluid and they're tailored to the individual. Basically what it means is that when someone's brand new to the program, they're probably going to need a little bit more intensive support. We're really trying to get to know them, get all the housing paperwork and things done, really trying to secure that housing, and then hopefully we manage to do that, which we normally do, and then hopefully again things start to settle down a little bit, and then the focus might shift from surviving to let's sort of think about how I can thrive, and maybe it is looking at some study, or maybe it is looking at, I might volunteer at the local church, or I might, participate in a group at the community centre. And then sometimes what we find is people just eventually get so busy they've got no time for us anymore. Sometimes people might be working, they share the same office hours as we do, and it's pretty hard to get in touch, so we just reach out from time to time and see how things are going. But, life happens sometimes and things change, so housing might not be working out anymore and we might need to look at something else, or you might not have a job anymore, COVID for example. So then you might move back into one of the earlier stages because you need a little bit more help, and that's okay. Within that 3-year time frame, you can move in and out of those stages. Basically, we just move with you. We meet the client where they're at. Sometimes people leave, they might go interstate, or they might go MIA for a little while. People lose phones, we can't connect, and then they might pop back up a few months later, and we're still there. We're still here. We say, hey, what's been happening for you? Let's have a chat and let's look at what your goals are. Is it the same as what it was before, or have things changed? We really focus on skill development and capacity building so that our participants can confidently navigate systems beyond their time with Aspire. it's through this work where we are focusing on housing and, really importantly, the other goals, because I think for us the housing's a bit of a no-brainer and it's basically what everyone that we work with needs. It's really the other goals that are that longer term, so that's going to sustain people longer term. But it's through this work that by default we're avoiding the return to hospital, prison and into emergency accommodation, and that equals the cost savings. And this isn't something that we go about day to day going, oh my gosh, we've got to make sure this person doesn't go into hospital, or we have no control over the justice system. If someone has done the wrong thing, that there'll be that sort of course of action, but it just really happens organically. It just happens through meeting the other goals and the housing. That sometimes we do hear people say, I may as well go back to prison, it's better than sleeping rough. Got a roof, got a meal, somewhat safer than I would be otherwise, and so you kind of can almost understand. But when they are safe in their own home and maybe doing things that keep them busy, they're not thinking like that anymore. So basically our program is reducing demand on these areas, which is pretty cool. It's not always the case. Sometimes we do have people who sadly might be diagnosed with a terminal illness, or they might just not be able to shake past habits, or sometimes they might be with the program but something that's happened a while ago has caught up with them and they might land back in those areas, but that's okay. That happens from time to time, and we still look at ways that we can support people. We tend to be pretty relentless, and we don't just say, oh well, you're back in prison, then tough. It might be a short stay, and we really want to look at how we can support people to move away from that cycle. It's pretty interesting because last year's investor report told us some really interesting information, particularly around hospitals, and we know that 40% of the bed nights were used by 1% of our participants. So that's some pretty chronically unwell people that are probably needing long-term stays in hospital. The Aspire program had a set intake of 575 participants over 4 years. Intake ceased in June 2021. And those participants are then supported for 3 years through to June 2024. Our referrals come from specialist homelessness services, the South Australian Housing Authority, hospitals and prisons. The Aspire program received transitional government funding from the former Liberal government late last year, and we also received some funding from our current Labor government in April. This has meant that we were able to reopen intakes and accept an additional 180 participants. So this is funding additional and separate to the social impact bond. What that tells me is that we're doing a pretty good job if the governments are going to put their hands in the pockets and give us some more money to keep doing the great work that we're doing. This year we saw the completion of an independent evaluation of the impact of the program. This is a requirement of all social impact bonds. The findings tell us a lot of things. It's a 200-page document, so it tells us a lot, but basically it tells us that Aspire is a highly effective homelessness intervention and that this program is needed in the homelessness sector. The evaluation found that the program is often life-changing for our participants. We have proven some additional savings in areas like child protection, and we think likely in the area of Centrelink, but we're yet to sort of further delve into the federal government impacts, but that will likely be explored in the future. These additional savings aren't linked to our targets, but it's further proof of the positive and lasting impacts that our program is making. So as I mentioned, we're still working on the last financial year's current figures, but last financial year there were close to $9 million in savings due to avoid service usage. So not only do we get to help people in their experience of homelessness, we're saving money as well. So, I can stand here and tell you how good the program is, and I am, but there's no better evidence than sharing some words and thoughts of our participants. So one of our participants, as part of the evaluation process, shared their journey, and I'm going to read it in first person as that's how they shared it with me and how they agreed for it to be shared. So, family relationship breakdown, excuse me, and substance use ultimately led me to becoming homeless. I slept under a bridge with nowhere to go or turn. I felt like a troll under the bridge, and I thought, I'm not doing this anymore. I was facing a minor shoplifting charge, but it was enough to worry me about going to jail. I'd been there and done that, so I was doing all that I could to avoid doing it again. I went to drug court, and I did well. I enjoyed the positive praise when I was doing well, and I started to realise there was more to life. I had been to counsellors and services before, but that didn't work for me. I continued working on my sobriety when I entered the New Rose Residential Rehabilitation Program. Then Aspire came along. They were genuine and open, and the first time in a long time I enjoyed going there. I was quite surprised, as it didn't look anything like a homeless organisation. It was friendly, all the staff were smiling, and there was no pressure. I needed mainly housing, but they went above and beyond. Housing ended up taking a bit of a back seat. I had someone to chat to about things other than housing and drugs. I had help with computer literacy and looking for jobs. When I walked into Aspire, it felt like a load was taken off and felt like everything was going to be okay. I was getting my life back on track. What they did after I was housed made me feel special and like it was just for me. It was like a whole life thing. I had never had a house or a kitchen. When they get you the housing, they teach you to stay in the house. How to shop, give you recipes. They did things they didn't have to do. Before Aspire, I was isolated, and I wasn't the nicest person. People would cross the road to avoid me. That has changed because my attitude changed, and I was no longer angry at everything. Aspire helped me to see that there was good in people. No one judged me. Aspire made me realise that there was something more for me. They brought me out of my shell and they filled a gap. I can use a smartphone and a computer. To start with, I didn't even know how to cut and paste other than with a pair of scissors. And now I can do my own resume. I own an iPhone, a tablet, and a laptop, and I'm confident to use these things. I know it's okay to learn and make mistakes. I made posters to put up to get some handyman work, and I also worked in labour hire. I'm independent. It was always reinforced that I was the one doing the hard work, which I acknowledge. But I would say it was a team effort, with Aspire providing guidance. I wish I had bad things to say about the program, but I don't. I got what I needed from Aspire and more. I think about one of my first experiences when I started working at the Hutt Street Centre, and just made me realise how necessary it was. I was walking to an appointment with a participant, and as much as I hate to say it, there was probably some stereotypical aspects to how this person appeared that would make you assume that they had no house. And we were walking along in silence, and all of a sudden it just really struck me that people were walking past. They were looking at me, they were smiling really sympathetically at me, but no one was looking at the person I was walking next to. And I just thought, how this person didn't let on that they noticed or that they said anything, but you couldn't miss it. And I just thought, without somewhere like Hutt Street Centre, this would be invisible. No one would stop, no one would smile, no one would say hello. This person would just float around. And that was probably 6 years ago, and I've still not forgotten that to this day. So I guess if you're thinking about how are we working towards ending homelessness, if those stories aren't enough, Aspire has been able to house 78% of the program participants so far, with an 86% tenancy retention rate. So we do see people, they might get evicted, they might leave, they might move on for lots of reasons. But 86%, they get the house and we help them keep the house. And when you consider that as a rule of thumb, 50 to 60% of participants housed through shorter term case management approaches lose their tenancies and experience recidivism. And so that's a really incredibly strong outcome. I just want you to think a little bit about the takeaways from tonight. Homelessness is more prevalent than ever. We keep hearing about the housing crisis across our country. We're feeling the cost of living increases in our own hip pockets. When we go to the supermarket, I think every time I do a shop, it gets more and more and more. We're seeing it on our energy bills. It's everywhere. It's impacting everyone. It's really interesting because when we talk about the housing crisis, the last census told us that there are almost 84,000 unoccupied, privately owned units, apartments and houses across our state. And I think, when you think that our program, we've got 575 plus 180, you wouldn't need us anymore, would you? This tells us that the issue is not just a lack of housing, it needs to be, and it's not just a government issue, it's a whole of community issue. But hopefully what you've heard from me tonight is that Aspire offers long-term sustainable solutions, that building skills and capacity is vital so that people no longer need our support or support from other homelessness services, and that's the crux of ending homelessness. And as I said before, to Hutt Street Centre, it's what we call homefulness. I do find that sometimes people are a little bit fearful of homelessness. They shy away from it, they think it's a bit scary, or they think it's contagious. So maybe they're not looking that person in the eye that I was walking with because it's just the fear that it's a big problem. Some might even say it's a wicked problem. It just feels too big and overwhelming, and little old me, I couldn't possibly do anything. I couldn't even make a step towards, a solution. You might think that there is no way that you can help, but you can. Have a conversation. You've taken the first step. You're here hanging out with me tonight. You're taking up your precious Friday night. After today, share something with someone, with a neighbour, with a friend that you learnt tonight. Ask some questions. If you hear someone saying, oh, there's a bum just over there, why don't they just get a job? Challenge that. We know that the fastest growing population of people experiencing homelessness is older women. It's real and it is close to us. It might be our mum, our sister, our friend, our dad, our brother, someone we really respect. It might be a boss. There are other things that you can do. There might be things like donating your time, donating money, donating goods, but I know that we're not all in that position, and I really do think that have that conversation. Have that conversation. If you see someone that, we're assuming that maybe they're sleeping rough on the streets, smile, say hello. I just find that sometimes a smile, sometimes I've gotten to work in the morning and I walk past and say, good morning, and I smile, and someone looks up at me like, oh, you're talking to me? Yeah, it's heartbreaking, but it's really lovely when you go, oh, I've just made that person smile. And sometimes I think, I wonder how long it's been since someone said hello. So I hope that you leave here tonight feeling like you've learned something. Hope that you know that there are programs out there that are considering sustainable and long-term solutions to ending homelessness. I hope that you feel better equipped to have conversations about homelessness and challenging those stereotypes. And I hope that you have the knowledge that there is a way to move towards ending homelessness. I would love to make a bold statement and say, I'd love to see a time when my program isn't needed anymore. But I think the reality is that, we're still going to be needed for a little bit longer. We're going to need to reach more people before this can happen, but I still hope to see this in my lifetime. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm really glad that you came to join me tonight. Yes, I will take some questions. I forgot a slide too, but you've already heard that, so.
David will make his way around with this microphone, but can I just, to avoid any, frustration, this thing is really kind of temperamental, and there's an on-off switch. See? And if you leave it alone, it works a treat. But when you go like, and grab it, see what happens? You turn the jolly thing off. And so all you've got to do is just hold it at the bottom and it works, and it won't let us down. Now, I'm not sure who's claiming rights to the first question, but just a little bit more information, a question from me to kick us off. How closely do you work with what I might call sister organisations around town that maybe don't do it quite like you guys, but you know, you're all in the same field and game? Does it work well?
Yes, ultimately it does. I think, you know, I always try to look at a silver lining. I think COVID was something that really brought the inner city services closer together, because we all were kind of flying by the seat of our pants. None of us knew what we were doing, but we really all came together to say, you know, who's sleeping rough on the streets? Who do we need to get off the streets? Who do we need to keep safe? People were placed into motels, so we were all sharing the load across the services to go and visit. So I think that's a really good example of how we've come together. We try, I think particularly the inner city services work really well together because we tend to see sometimes the same people coming through our doors. And often we do slightly different things, so it's really important we've all got our place. So you've got Catherine House, you know, working predominantly, well, only with women, you know, experiencing homelessness and all the other things we've talked about. You've got Vinnie's, which is a shorter term accommodation. Hutt Street doesn't have accommodation, so we've all kind of got our place, and I think that works pretty well. Doesn't look, not always, it's not always perfect. You might know that, you know, last year we had massive homelessness reform in our state, so lots of the services changed, lots of the organisations changed, so that was really tough, but I think we're getting to a good place now where it's starting to work really, really well. Be kind.
Yes, I'm fairly ignorant. So, look, my question, we're meant to be the amphetamine capital of the world in South Australia and Adelaide. Does that type of thing lead to the homelessness, the situation, or the actual main causes that other than, say, amphetamine and drugs? What are they?
I would respond by saying I think substance use is both a cause and a consequence of homelessness. And sometimes I think if I was to put myself in someone's shoes, you know, some of our participants and experiencing what they'd be, you know, they're experiencing, I'd probably want to drown that out as well. I think the most common, was that your question around some of the most common substances around? We don't really have any particular numbers in terms of, you know, what substances people use and how frequently, but we definitely do have people disclose that they use methamphetamines, cannabis. They're probably the two most common, and alcohol probably is the most common actually, and a lot more easily and readily available, and, you know, don't be fooled because it's legal, it's just as detrimental, if not worse sometimes.
I'm very interested in the size of the program. What's your staff, the core staff? And are they all Hutt Street based, or have you got staff coming from other sectors of government, etc.?
Great question. In terms of the original social impact bond model, it was sort of designed where we would sort of wind up numbers of both participants and staff. So as we took in more clients, we needed more staff. And then the reverse was to happen, so the wind down. So we would, you know, close participants after 3 years and we would reduce our staffing numbers. As I did touch on, we've had a nice little government funding injection. So at the moment, when we're just about close to fully staffed, we'll have 19. Sorry, I've forgotten the second part of your question. Other agencies, sorry, yes. So we're all Adelaide-based and we all work in the same office based at the Hutt Street site. We work metro-wide, so we do a lot of outreach. So This morning I was out in Salisbury. I know that we had someone out in Mitchell Park yesterday. I think the day before someone was at Christie's. So we go far and wide, but all kind of based at that central Hutt Street hub.
And everyone's a social work background, or are there like government clerical specialists and
A mix.
psychologists and all sorts of things?
Yep. So we call our case managers case navigators because we were in a really lucky position to build the program and kind of design it from the ground up, so we could kind of call things what we wanted. So there's myself as the manager. We have 2 team leaders. We have an admin assistant. We have a housing coordinator. And we also have an alcohol and other drug worker as well in the program. But the majority of the team are our case navigators.
Yes, I was just curious as to
Hang on. Yes.
In the bottom? Is it on? No, I just wanted to know what the ratio of staff to clients was at any given time. And it's probably a twofold question. There's quite a lot of vacant social housing in the city, probably Pope Court and around Carrington Street. Do you know what plans there are for that and why we can't sort of why people can't access it?
Yep, so the ratio is on average of about 20 participants to 1 case navigator. It can fluctuate and vary a little bit, but we like to keep it sort of the 15 to 20 mark. In terms of the social housing, it's a really common question. Often what I find is when you do see the vacant properties, it's usually because they're waiting for repairs and work done. So it kind of looks bad on the surface in terms of, oh, we've got people on the streets, but we've got empty properties. But the properties sometimes aren't quite fit to be moved into just yet. So I don't have any specifics on that particular area. We do work really close with housing, but I don't know the specifics. But I would safely assume that there's some reasons for that.
I think you need to go and look at it.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of squatters in there and drug use.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know the exact ones, but it might be, do you know that they're South Australian Housing Authority properties? Yeah, okay. 9 times out of 10, they're probably aware.
This is like a long-term issue because there are people who've lived in those buildings for 25 years
Yeah.
and are threatened every day. I just wondered what can be done because that housing should be in use.
Look, we're always asking for more housing, definitely.
Is Housing SA's problem?
So, yeah, technically South Australian Housing Authority are a separate organisation to the Hutt Street Centre. So, yeah, they've got the mandate of the properties. But like I said, what I can say is I can assure you that, and I've done it in the past, I've rung them up and I've said, there's this property, normally someone comes in and goes, there's this property right here, it's vacant, can I have it? And don't ask, don't get. And there's always a rationale. So, yeah. The squatters is really tricky, and I know often they do get SAPOL and things to come through quite regularly, but SAPOL can't be there all the time. Yeah, but safety is obviously a priority.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you. What can local councils do to support people in their community experiencing homelessness?
It's a great question. I know that we do work really quite closely with our local council, probably not so much from my level, but probably my CEO and more senior levels. But just collaborating and communicating about what's happening and why, I think is pretty much the crux of it. I know I've had a little bit to do with some other councils. Sometimes council members will reach out and ask what they can do, or they might have ideas. Sometimes they might reach out and say, oh, there's a group of people in this area, and they'll flag them with us. And you know, obviously there are other homelessness services as well. The Towards Home Alliance has an outreach team as well, so they go out and about. But I think that collaboration is really important, and often the services are quite sort of geographic, so they've got their different areas of, you know, different organisations work in different areas. So we're really lucky to work with the Adelaide City Council. And I'm not just saying that because I know there are some people in the room, but I think, we work really well together about what's happening, and if there's big groups in the parklands and there's tents and things, we're having lots of chats about what we can do to manage that.
Thanks again for your presentation. It was really informative. A couple of questions. With regards to the people coming through Hutt Street Centre, are you collecting data on what is actually leading them into homelessness as well? Do you have that data on file? Is it you're collecting that actively? Is that something that will be available for someone to sort of access without obviously names or anonymised, but to come in and say statistically, we're seeing these are the key issues that are leading people into homelessness?
We capture it and do talk about it in terms of the Aspire program.
Yep.
Because I've moved away a little bit from the other programs as such, we've all got different kind of reporting requirements, but we do capture what the presenting need is. So what sort of led you to come in today,
yep.
And connect with our services. So normally the top one is housing.
Yeah. Okay. And the other question I've got as well is, over the last few years, are you seeing an increased demand year on year? And just sort of give us some type of quantum of growth and demand that you're seeing for your services? That'd be interesting.
I thought this question would come up, and we were only just talking about it the other day because we're just in that process of wrapping up all of our annual reporting and pulling together all of that data. So I don't have anything current on the year on year, but we definitely are seeing an increase. But I think besides the increase, we're seeing a shift in the demographic. So we are seeing more people that maybe are working, and I think it's that impacts of the housing crisis and the cost of living that I touched on. So that sort of the cohort is shifting.
Thank you very much, Tameka, for your great talk. I just want to ask about First Nations people and to what extent you serve people who are Indigenous, and whether or not you have staff who are themselves Indigenous and perhaps have a special, are able to specially relate to their own people.
Yes, so we definitely do work with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, and always try to and advertise to have staff that also identifies Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander. Where it gets tricky, it's not really tricky, but I think there are Aboriginal specific homelessness services, and we are not one of them. So whilst we support people from all sorts of backgrounds and nationalities, we don't have that specialised focus. So sometimes you might focus that specialty sits with that agency, but definitely most times you'll find with government funding contracts there'll be a KPI for about 20% of your participants to identify as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander, and we just, as I said, our support in Aspire in particular is individualised, so it's based on that person and their needs. So we definitely can tailor it to that cultural specialty as well. Does that answer your question? Yes.
Thank you so much, Tameka. It's been very informative and inspiring, the work that you're doing. During COVID, well, we're still in it, of course, even though yes we are, there was a lot of talk about some of the positive aspects of homeless people who are homeless were actually finding housing because of the health crisis that we had, and of course we weren't sure about the impacts of hospital admissions and everything with COVID. Has there been kind of good learnings out of that you're aware of, that we were able to do this as an emergency response? What have we kind of learned out of that? And I guess I was hoping there was some generosity on the part of government and other agencies in finding people homes. So I just wondered what have been some of the learnings?
I think, as I said, it was a really quick response, and everyone just kind of had to pull it and come in together really rapidly. And, we're all kind of on a level playing field because no one knew what was happening, and today was different to tomorrow and everything was rapidly changing. In terms of the learning, I think again, and I think I'm pretty lucky because I do get to see a flip side of it, but I think, it's easy to bag government and blame government, but they are incredible. Like, I cannot fault them in terms of the housing that they offer Aspire, full stop, besides COVID. And in terms of the COVID response, it was really great because we were finding people accommodation. And then there was a real emphasis on let's keep people supported. It's not just your house, let's move on. I think what we learnt is, again, sort of what my program, I guess, already knows is it's around good fit, the right house for the right person. We didn't really have the luxury of that in the COVID times. It was sort of getting people into places as quickly as possible because it was a health and a housing response, so the health was kind of the priority there. So I think we probably realised that maybe some of the placements weren't the best fit, but we also acknowledged that the reason was because of the speed we had to act.
How many people in the room actually rent a property? Could we have a show of hands? Do you know you're 28 days away from being homeless?
I have heard that, yes.
Yes, because a lot of people are on fixed term tenancies and they might have been in a place for 5 years and then suddenly the owner decides to sell the property and the real estate agent's obliged to give you 28 days notice before the end of a fixed term tenancy. So you've got 28 days to find other accommodation. And then you go to an inspection that a real estate agent conducts for a rental property and you line up with 25 other people. And out of those 25, there's probably at least 3/4 of the people that would be very eligible to actually rent the property and be suitable for the landlord. But the real estate agent can only choose one family. So what happens to the other people that miss out? And I've come across people, I'm a real estate agent, I've come across people that have put in 100 applications and been knocked back. And there is a real need out there, and then we need more houses.
Yeah, I think, part of that links back to the, 84,000 empty homes. What happens to the people that get knocked back? They potentially land with us and, maybe already with us. Sometimes it's really disheartening when, we're working with someone and we're just encouraging them to explore every and any option and they're going to inspection after inspection. And bearing in mind that costs money too, because you've got to get there and you've done the paperwork and you want to present yourself nice, and just getting knocked back is pretty devastating and has pretty detrimental impacts on people's mental health, because there's only so many times you want to hear no, right? So lucky that we're around to help, but agree, there definitely needs to be a shift, and that's sort of what I was touching on around. It's not just always going to public and community housing providers. There's more of a community response. What can we do with those empty homes? I don't know all the answers, but I'm glad you asked, because I guess that's the flip side, isn't it? Because you might be the person that's saying no to 20 people and yes to one. So there's another question, I think.
Is there? Follow on.
And population went down from 35,000 people to 24,000 people. Yet there was no more accommodation available because there was 3-bedroom housing trust properties that years ago mum and dad and 3 or 4 kids used to live in, and now the 3-bedroom housing trust properties are being let to one person. So there's less population in a city like Whyalla, but there's no more available accommodation because it's been spread so thinly. So you might look at regional areas that have sort of going down in population, but I would say that there's no more available housing because of the fact that there's less people living in those houses.
Is there one last question? You want to follow on?
Well, a bit of a follow-on, actually. It's a good question for comment, I think.
Hold on, Dom.
Getting ahead of myself. It's a fantastic observation, actually, and I think it's one that is born from a bit more of over time. We've seen the destruction over time of the family unit, because now you do have a lot of more independent individuals or people that aren't, obviously pairing off, and of course, that makes things even harder for them financially as well when there's two working partners working together. So I think we've got a societal problem that's exacerbating this issue that we currently have. It's not obviously the whole issue, obviously there's other issues as well. But I think and the reason why I was asking those questions as to, where's this all coming from, in terms of what's causing it, is you guys are doing fantastic work, but you're getting stressed in terms of your capacity, and that means that there's more demand. And why is there more demand? What's happening in society? So as you said, the big thing that you'd like to achieve in 3 years' time is to be unemployed, right, in your role, and that would be fantastic. Not for you, but for obviously society. But we have to, we need to top and tail this. I always talk about top and tailing everything. You have to understand, obviously, how to address it, which you guys are doing fantastic work. Question that I've got is then for the government to come in and say, well, what's causing it and how are we going to address that, so that you haven't got as much throughput coming through. But I think that's one big observation I've found is it's a family issue.
That leads to the last question that I'd like to ask, just to wrap up Q&A time, and it's this. If you had the magic wand, or the bank account to go with it, are there perhaps a couple of things that you would do? If you really had the opportunity and could make it happen, are there a couple of key things?
Oh, how big is the bank account? I think one of the first things, often what we do see is the public and community housing stock that we have, which is the most affordable accommodation, is often what we call high density. So it might be big flat groups, it might be 2 or 3 stories high, or you might be really close to your neighbours. I think a good idea would be properties that are more, and it's all kind of centralised. And I think it's a little bit like the question we had over here before. I think when you have a lot of people in one space that have all got a lot of things happening, it might not fare well for the people living there, but maybe also the neighbours and the community as well. So I think it's around suitable properties, and I know I've chucked that word around a lot, but maybe you've got a bit of a yard and it's a little bit more sparse rather than your neighbour, a stone's throw away, which is obviously quite ambitious because you need land, you need space and money, but as we know, cities tend to go up. I think 2 of the key things that we find is investment in really, really sound and strong mental health support services and programs and policy and all of the things that link in, and I think the substance as well. So mental health and substance, I think they can't be separated sometimes, and I think it's that understanding. Sometimes what we find in our sector is things are put into little boxes, like this is housing, this is health, this is mental health, this is drug related or alcohol related, and I think a bigger understanding and investment in those structures. I think the systems, is something that we find challenging, is working within systems. So I think really strong, I think those sorts of the services are the ones that maybe suffer at budget time, but I think if I had the magic one, they would be my key things.
Thank you, Tameka. Stay there, because I'd like to ask Fergus to come up and sum up, and also issue a formal thanks.
How are you going to get in?
Yeah, I'll give you that in a minute. I've written a whole lot of
I was going
notes.
to take it and run.
Here are all my notes. Now, so much for not being a great public speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I thought that was an amazing oration. That's one of our absolute best Wilks Orations, don't you think, Margaret? Yeah. You said that people say to you, I don't know how you do what you do. And social work seems to those of us who aren't social workers just the toughest sort of job. But you are obviously such a positive, optimistic, hopeful person, and a real inspiration to the people you work with and for, with a real loving heart that really comes through in everything you said. A vision to end homelessness, ladies and gentlemen. It's not a matter of just managing it or just minimising it. It's a vision to actually end homelessness, continuing the great work of the Daughters of Charity, fabulous Christian organisation, obviously. You introduced us to the term homefulness. Isn't that beautiful? I've never heard the words. Anyone heard the word homefulness before tonight? Homefulness, what a beautiful concept. Long-term sustainable housing, reconnecting with family, work skills, and so on. And you told us about the social impact bond. Had anyone heard of a social impact bond before tonight? What a fabulous idea. A social impact bond paying a good return to the investor, the government in this case, with objectively measuring the impact through health justice, on the measures of health justice and homelessness. If I wrote that down correctly. You know, we learn so much. The values. What about that value early on in one of the slides, the value of spirituality? Valuing and sharing love that is inventive to infinity. Did you receive that on the slide, folks? Boundless creativity and innovation. Love that is inventive to infinity. What a beautiful, what a wonderful, stunning idea. Then you had those beautiful stories from all your graduates of the program. The graduates, yeah, fantastic. So thank you again, Tameka, and we wish you, the Aspire program and the Hutt Street Centre, all the best in your amazing work to make Adelaide, South Australia, the world a better place, and your work, dare I say it, for God's kingdom. So thank you, Tameka. Here's a little token of appreciation from us, some chocks, and a nice little Tameka Thompson, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, everyone. I'm just going to quickly say two things. So you haven't heard of homefulness before because it's Hutt Street's very special term, so I'll plug that. And I guess just if there are any questions or if you ever want to reach out, Margaret does have my details, so feel free to get in touch. Thank you so much.
And it now is my task just to absolutely wrap things up before supper. And I'll add my thanks to Tameka. There's lots of things happening around the place in this field. We stumbled across one a little bit just recently. Unley Council is launching a program around cool respite centres in summer when it's stinking hot, to find a place where people can get cool for a while. Not something I ever would have thought of. So, I would like to thank, in no particular order, our musos, wonderful. Our AV tech tonight, thank you, sir. All of the ELC team, your work's not done because we're about to have supper. The office crew for helping put it all together. And there's probably others that I've forgotten. But to all of you that came out tonight, I'd like to say thank you, and thanks for not going to see Kate Blanchett. Please enjoy supper. Thank you.